In this video, we're going to learn how to convert between fractions, decimals, and percentages without a calculator. Remember, fractions, decimals, and percentages are just ways of indicating parts of a whole. To begin with, to change a percentage to a decimal, we simply divide the number by 100 and remove the percentage sign, because the percentage sign just means out of 100. So, for example, 50%, to change that into a decimal, I'm going to do 50 divided by 100, which we should know is going to be 0.5. Because the number 50 is the same as 50.0, and if we divide by 100, the decimal point will move 2 places to the left, leaving us with 0.5. To change 5% into a decimal, I'm going to divide 5 by 100, and if I do that, I will end up with 0.05. 25% as a decimal is 0.25. You can probably see a pattern now. To change 0.2 places, which will give me 0.002 as a decimal. Please pause. These are the answers. Notice 200%, if I do 200 divided by 100, I get 2, and that just refers to 200%. It could be that there's been an increase in profit at a company by 100%. That would be the percentage that we then have. To change a percentage to a fraction is very similar, because percent means out of 100. So to change a percentage to a fraction, we write the number as a fraction out of 100, which is the same as dividing it by 100 really, and then we simplify if we can. Let's have a look at these examples. So for the first question, we want to change 20% into a fraction. So I'm going to write 20% as 20 over 100 and then simplify if I can. To simplify a fraction, we can divide the numerator at the top and the denominator at the bottom by a common factor, a number that goes into both of them. Well, we can see 10 goes into 20 twice, so I can divide the top by 10 to give me 2, and it goes into 100 10 times, so I get 2 over 10. And I can simplify even further now. I can now divide top and bottom by 2 to give me 1 over 5. So 20% is 1/5, and that's a really good one to remember. Similarly, 50%, another good one to remember, is 50 over 100, which will simplify to 5 over 10, which will then simplify to 1 over 2. 50% is a half. 25%, again 25 over 100. We know that 5 goes into 25 5 times. 5 goes into 100 20 times, so we have 5/20ths, which will simplify further to 1 over 4. 75% is 75 out of 100. I know that 25 times 3 is 75, and 25 times 4 is 100, so we have 3/4. 80%, I know 80% is going to be 80 over 100, which will simplify to 8 over 10, which will simplify to 4/5, which is quite sensible, because 80 is 4 times 20, so if 20% is 1/5, it makes sense that 80% is 4 times as much, 4/5. Finally, 7% is just 7 out of 100, and we cannot simplify because there's no, the only common factor between 7 and 100 is 1, so that's as far as we can go, which is sometimes the case. Have a go at these questions now. So I'd like you to change the percentages to fractions and then simplify if possible. Pause the video now, and when you're ready for the answers, press play. We're going to look at changing fractions to percentages and decimals. Without a calculator, as we're doing, to change a fraction to a percentage, we multiply the numerator and the denominator to make the denominator 100. So let's do some examples. As we can see here, we have some fractions where the denominators are all factors of 100, which is generally what we have when we don't have a calculator to work with. So for A, we have 4/5. What I'm going to do is multiply the numerator and the denominator, so 4 being the numerator, 5 being the denominator, by the number that will make 5 into 100, which is 20, because 5 times 20 is 100. So I'm going to multiply top and bottom by 100, which will give me 80 over 100, which we should know 80 hundredths is just 80%, because percent means out of 100. So we've now changed 4/5 into a percentage, which you might remember is 80%. For B, I'm going to do a very similar thing. I'm going to multiply the numerator and denominator by the number that I need to multiply 20 by to get 100. 20 multiplied by 5 is 100. So I need to multiply the top and the bottom by 5, which will give me 35 hundredths, which is 35%. Lastly, 6/25, I need to multiply the top and the bottom by 4, giving me 24 hundredths, which is 24%. What I'd like, we can also change a fraction to a decimal by this method. What we would do first is change the fraction into a percentage. So if we look at these examples, we would first change the fractions into percentages. So for the first one, I'm going to multiply top and bottom by 20, which will give me 60 over 100. And we can then remember what we did at the start. 60 out of 100 is 60%. And to change that into a decimal, we just divide by 100. This is what we did at the very beginning, which will give me 0.6. 7/20, as we've seen, is 35%. And to change that into a decimal, I simply divide 35 by 100, which will give me 0.35. 9/25, finally, I multiply numerator and denominator by, in this case, 4, in order to make the denominator into 100, which will give me 36 hundredths, which is going to be 36%, which is 0.36 as a decimal. Finally, if I want to change a decimal to a percentage, we simply multiply by 100 and add a percentage sign. This is the opposite of when we change a percentage to a decimal, which, if you remember, we would need us to divide by 100 and remove the percentage sign. So for the first one, if I want to change 0.1 into a percentage and then a fraction, I would first multiply it by 100%. This will make it into a decimal. 0.1 times 100 is going to be 10, so I have 10%, which then as a fraction is going to be 10 out of 100, which is going to be 1 out of 10. Similarly, for 0.5, I would have 0.5 multiplied by 100%, giving me 50%, which is 50 over 100, which will simplify to a half. 0.35 multiplied by 100% gives me 35%, which is 35 hundredths. I can divide the top and the bottom by 5 to simplify, giving me 7/20. Finally, 0.04, to change that to a percentage, I multiply by 100%, giving me 4%, which I can write as a fraction by writing 4 out of 100. And I can then simplify by dividing top and bottom by 2 to give me 2/50, and then 1/25. I'd like you to have a go at these practice questions. Please change 2 percentages and fractions, simplifying the fractions if possible. Here are the answers.